Denver Broncos fantasy football preview. Are we taking Javonte's upside or Melvin's value? That rhymed a little bit. I like that. That's a good start to the show. We're also going to discuss which Broncos receivers the best of their ADP. Is Russ potentially the QB1 overall? On the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. Welcome back, folks, to another episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby LaMarco. Today we have a different show. We're doing a little bit of a Denver Broncos, team outlook preview. We're going to be talking about the receivers, the running backs, Russ, a little bit of Albert O as well. We have a special guest jumping on the show with us today as well. Before I bring her on, want to just talk quickly. Make sure you're following us across the board. We know you're watching on YouTube, folks. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the comments, throw up a like. We really would appreciate your support. Also, make sure you're checking us out on TikTok and IG at Razzball Fantasy. And of course, make sure you're going to razzball.com, folks. We have great articles dropping on the baseball, basketball, hockey, and of course, football side as well. And make sure you're checking out the latest ADP tool on razzball.com. We just updated it last week, so go check that out as well. Now I'm going to bring on my special guest for today, Queen Roxanne. You can actually find Roxanne's content over on the Mallertown podcast, and you also follow her on Twitter at FQueenRoxanne. What's going on, Roxanne?
How's it going?
It is going. I am excited. When we were talking a couple weeks ago about jumping on the podcast, and you were like, I like the AFC West. Let's talk Denver Broncos. I go, there isn't a better team to talk about right now because they're probably the most exciting, variance of opinions. So I heard you're a Denver Broncos fan. So talk to us a little bit about the excitement that you have for Russell Wilson joining your team.
All right. So, back in the day when he beat us as a Seahawk in the Super Bowl, I can't say that I loved Russell Wilson then. And it's really funny. My mom is a Seahawk fan. And after halftime, when they ran that touchdown back on us, we actually kicked her out of the Super Bowl party. You have to leave. And not only is she a Seahawk fan, she loves Russell Wilson, loves him. And for the last 2 years, me and my brother jokingly have told her he's going to come to Denver. You're going to have to cheer for him here. He's not going to come to Denver. He's not going to come to Denver. As things started heating up with Aaron Rodgers here, kind of like, damn, we're not going to get Russell Wilson, and then all of a sudden he's like, yeah, I'm staying in Green Bay. I'm not going anywhere. Then all of a sudden the talks opened up again, and I wake up and Russell Wilson's ours, and I'm like, all right, it's not April Fool's Day, so I know this is a joke. My brother was on vacation. I called him. I'm like, you're not going to believe it. We got him. He's like, we got Russell Wilson. He's like, don't lie to me while I'm on vacation. I don't have Wi-Fi. And I'm like, I'm not lying to you. You can go, I don't know, go find a TV somewhere. And then I called my mom and told her I will be the first to buy you a Broncos Russell Wilson jersey. She probably won't wear it, but I might make her. So as a fan, I am very excited because what we went through for the last 5 years, just the whole situation, everything, coaches, quarterbacks, it was not fun after winning a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? It was this high and then just crash. And so as a fantasy football fan, as a Bronco fan, I am over the moon that Russell Wilson is a Denver Bronco.
Well, I'm glad to hear you bringing your family potentially together. I'm excited for you and your family. You got a Russell Wilson fan. You got the Denver Broncos fan. It sounds great. So I'm happy. Russ is doing big things, and I like it. Well, first of all, you had a busy offseason. Forget about just Russ. You have a brand new coaching staff with Nathaniel Hackett. But I need you to take now, Roxanne, I can let you put the fan on hat for just a little bit, but now I need you to put on that fantasy football analyst hat just to talk about now the outlooks for these guys. And this is a fun one because there's a lot of players to talk about. So let's just dive into it. The first one I want to talk about is Russell Wilson. And I think really when it comes down to Russ, the question is he kind of your top middle round QB target? Are you targeting currently today is a QB 10 going 79th overall? So talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on Russ and if you're targeting him in drafts in 2022.
I am definitely targeting him in drafts. I think his upside here with the new coaches, with his new attitude, he wants to play again. He's happy to be here. He's doing so much stuff in this offseason with the team. Yeah, I mean, it can't be worse, right?
Honestly, I can tell you this. I think Teddy B gets a bad rap a little.
He does.
Teddy B, he's serviceable enough. And listen, last year you guys were a train wreck, But at the same time, you could tell like that's in a division with Derek Carr, Patrick Mahomes, and those kind of players, and Justin Herbert. You got to have a guy like Russ to compete. You got to agree, right?
I 100% agree. We have not been competing for 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next thing, one thing I do want to touch on before we jump to the running backs is, tempering some expectations for Russ, because it is a new situation, right? He is changing teams, and it's a new scheme for everybody. Nathaniel Hackett comes in.
Right.
Aaron Rodgers wasn't a slam dunk top 5 quarterback his first season with Nathaniel Hackett and Matt LaFleur. He was actually QB 12. Tom Brady was the QB 10 when he first went to Tampa, even though he had a monster season, but he wasn't a top 5 quarterback. Neither was Matthew Stafford last year. On a points per game basis, he was QB 9. So I actually think his QB 10 makes sense. I think it's a perfect spot for him this season. So I am excited to draft Russ too. Let's jump down to the running backs, because I think a lot of people are going to question, whether or not who's the better running back at ADP. Obviously, I think a lot of us are on the Javonte Williams hype train,
right,
and we know Javonte's a stud. But when you're looking at their ADPs right now, it's essentially almost 8 full rounds difference. I mean, Javonte Williams, RB10 going 19th overall, Melvin Gordon going 36 RB, 102nd overall. So I guess my first question is, are you buying Javonte, or are you feeling the Melvin Gordon value, or is it both for you?
It's both for me. If I don't get Javonte right away, because he's in every draft I've been in, he is going quick. And I am like, wow. If we are going off numbers, from last year with them together, it's the exact same. Now, of course, we do have a new coaching staff who you have to pick at some point a better running back. You know what I mean? Somebody's got to have more, but who's it going to be, right? What does Nathaniel Hackett have to go off of? He has last year's numbers, and they are actually ridiculous how similar and exact they are.
Yeah.
And they say they're going to do the same thing. Whether they do or not, that's where we have to decide, are they going to or not? And if they're not, then who's going to get more yards? And it should be Javonte, right?
Yeah.
100%. But if they're splitting it, then it's a split of who you're going to take.
Yeah, it's hard to justify that delta between the two, right? Because of what happened last year.
Right.
But also look at Nathaniel Hackett. I mean, he's coming from a Green Bay Packers team that down the stretch split the backfield between Dillon and Aaron Jones. I mean, yes, Aaron Jones was good. He was the RB13 last year in PPR points per game. Dillon was RB37. But I kind of see the backfield being a little bit even more closer than that was.
Right.
And if you go back further, if everyone remembers, C.J. Spiller and Fred Jackson, if you want to go way back to the Nathaniel Hackett with Buffalo Bills days,
wow,
Fred Jackson was the RB13, and if C.J. Spiller was the first-round pick who ended up being the RB33. So it's not a slam dunk that Nathaniel Hackett is going to take the younger back and roll them. If he feels that Melvin Gordon, this is a win-now team now. I mean, this with Russell Wilson, they need to go with their lead back. It could be Melvin Gordon getting the 1A work. It's not a slam dunk just yet, but I love Javonte. I think he's something special about this kid. Right? You got it. So I agree. It's hard to fade him. I still think Javonte's a top 15 back, but I just don't think I'll get him if I'm ranking him that low. And I think that's high, but it's low from what we're seeing. So you were talking a little bit about the drafting. So where is he going in drafts? You see him in the top of the second?
Oh yeah, for sure. I took him in the second yesterday. I think I have Lamar Jackson and then Javonte Williams are my first 2 picks. And I could have, and I would always, I never skip Derrick Henry. The thought of skipping Dalvin Cook is, but I did because I don't do it all the time. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to take Javonte the second round because I have seen this happen where I let him go and then I'm sad. And then I take Melvin and they decide Javonte, we're giving him 1,500 yards and Melvin's only getting 600 and some. It could just go. We have high expectations, but we also don't know what to expect.
Right.
Everything is new here. Every single thing is new here, except those 2 running backs. They're the same thing, right? They're the same as what we had last year. I hope Nathaniel Hackett gets, like you said, is the gap between the 2 of them too high? And I would think if the same thing happens as that happened last year, yes, it is way too high. Because you could be taking Melvin. Where's Melvin Gordon? Gordon going like I would say 7th, 10th round, 7 to 10.
Yeah, 102nd overall right now is his average ADP.
So if you can wait to get that same value, what could you have gotten instead of Javonte Williams there? You know what I mean? As a player, you could be getting a quarterback. You could be getting a really, really good. You could probably be getting Cooper Kupp.
Oh yeah. Well, in the second round, right?
No, I'm talking first round still.
Okay, first round ADP. Yeah. When you are you talking super flex? You took Lamar in the first round, or was that a standard draft?
Super flex.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, that's so even. I mean, running backs are getting pushed down even further. So Javonte in the second was probably closer to that 1-2 turn in a regular standard draft, if that's the case, because those quarterbacks are not going to be going early, and you're probably going to see 7-8 quarterbacks going in the top, 15 picks. So Javonte's definitely a 1-2 turn, and I agree. I was big on Melvin Gordon last year, ironically, and it worked out. And I think this year, because there's literally no downside. If he ends up flopping, you only spend a 9th round pick on him. That's low upside. And if he ends up being a solid RB2 on a better offense, by the way, we have to factor in that Russ is going to bring more scoring opportunities potentially for these running backs. So you got to like that as well. Let's jump down to receivers. Let's jump down to receivers because this one is, when I tell you, absolutely just like who knows what's going to happen, right? Because, you have Jerry Jeudy, you have Courtland Sutton going right next to each other currently in drafts at wide receiver 20 and 22, right around 51st and 54th overall. And then all of a sudden, Tim Patrick, poor Tim, all Tim did last year was lead the team in basically fantasy points. He's going all the way down at wide receiver 60. Yes, that is 6-0 at 139th overall. So I guess my question I pose to you, Roxanne, is which wide receiver do you like right now at their ADP?
Well, they both were not good last year, right? I mean, they had 2 touchdowns between the two of them. Jerry Jeudy had 0 touchdowns. They obviously are going to both, if things work out the way they should with Russell Wilson, they both should be 1,000-yard receivers, right? If we're expecting him to throw 4,000 plus yards, they should be getting 1,000 yards each of that. They should definitely be getting touchdowns at this point because we have a quarterback that can throw the ball now, a quarterback that can throw deep balls. I know Jerry Jeudy, was it last year? I don't know. I don't like Jerry Jeudy as much as I do Courtland Sutton, but there's no reason why, because what's 2 touchdowns? Really? So again, we're going off of last year's numbers, and I definitely think they should be ranked right next to each other because we're not going to know which one. Mm-hmm. We've heard, Courtland Sutton and Russell Wilson like each other, but I've also heard a lot of great things with Tim Patrick and Russell Wilson that nobody's talking about. Nobody's talking about that. And I have taken Tim Patrick in quite a few drafts later because that's just not, for whatever reason, like you said, not being talked about.
Absolutely. I know what's funny about that too. We had a show a couple weeks ago where we talked about the AFC news and notes. And one of the things I talked about on the podcast was I have not heard a single thing about a single alpha receiver. It sounds like Patrick's getting love. Jerry Jeudy's getting love one day. Courtland Sutton. And that actually worries me for fantasy because if all 3 of these guys are going to be factors, you could try to compare it to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett all you want, but there has never been a third receiver who's going to demand targets like Tim Patrick on those teams. And that's going to lower the upside for these guys. We also have to factor in, we just kind of saw a watered down version of it last year with Teddy B. Now, if we apply like Russell Wilson's career highs, if we let's say we give Russell Wilson 4,500 yards, 42 touchdowns on top of the production last year, and then you start divvying out this production, we're still looking at probably low end wide receiver 2 because all these guys were outside the top 50 in points per game last year. So it's a long way. So they were going from 8.5 points. If they even jumped to 12.5, 13 points per game, that's still low-end wide receiver 2 numbers, and that's where they're being drafted. So I just don't know the ceiling. I am a little hesitant about Jeudy and Sutton. So it sounds to me that you're actually I would say the answer to the question is Tim Patrick, correct?
Correct. Just because, again, it's not being talked about. That's all. Yeah. We all can speculate that, of course, Russell's going to throw to these 2, of course, and they're going to stay healthy and it's going to be different, but we don't know. And so you can take these guys really early, you don't know, or you can take a really good wide receiver and then take Tim Patrick again, way late. And if somebody gets hurt, which that is, ever jinx. I don't want to jinx players. I don't want to anything like that. But injuries happen. It happens. So then somebody's got to step right in. And who's going to step right in if either one of them get hurt?
Yeah. Well, KJ Hamler is probably the answer because he's another receiver we haven't even talked about. Another guy who, by the way, everyone's compared to Tyler Lockett. Like, oh, if anybody's going to be Tyler Lockett, it's going to be KJ Hamler, who we haven't even talked about as the wide receiver 4. So that's mind-blowing to me. I think it's personally, it seems like in the round 5, the receivers who have a better chance to be clear-cut alphas on their team than Sutton and Judy with Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler. Now, I think that the next guy is another interesting one because before we buried the lead. Everybody wants to. I actually had to put Albert O because number 1, Ogwega, how you even say his last name? I can't even say it. I can't say his name. Number 1, number 2, it won't even fit on the screen. So that's before this. But Albert O. My question for you is he's currently going tight end 16, so he is being drafted consistently at 143rd overall. Are you taking a late round flyer on Alberto, or is it because of all the other competition for targets? Are you looking elsewhere at the tight end position for a late round flyer?
No, I would not. I mean, see, it's hard for me again. Like, I have to not be a fan right now and be a fantasy analyst. And why wouldn't you take a chance with him? You know, like his numbers are so comparable to so many people, or could be with Russell Wilson. Why wouldn't you take him as your second tight end? I don't know. Do people take 2 tight ends later? Sometimes.
Well, I think if you're drafting 2, it makes sense. If you didn't draft an early tight end or a mid-round tight end, it makes a ton of sense to draft 2 guys late because they are late round flyers. We don't know, so you better take 2 shots. And I do think Alberto is a decent option if you do that strategy. But go ahead, keep going.
With Russell Wilson again, he is. We're assuming he's going to throw all these yards, all these touchdowns, which it's not out of the realm. He has done it. He has done it on a really good offense. His tight ends, they get some production, some, not a lot, as opposed to, like you said, Lockett and
Metcalf.
Yes. They were beast wide receivers, though. You know, he didn't have to go to a tight end a lot in Seattle. We don't know with the numbers from last year. Our wide receivers aren't that great. He might decide nobody's watching over there. Nobody's watching Alberto. Let's try and get him a few times because all the what's it called? Defense is going to be on Sutton and Judy. Maybe if you got Hamler or the other one in there, Albert, who's guarding him now, right?
Yeah. And
Russell Wilson, as a smart, good quarterback, knows that and can figure that out. I really have taken Alberto. I'm not going to lie. I have taken him because I also am a Denver fan, you know, and I hope by me taking him that it'll happen.
Yeah. I think this situation kind of reminds me a little bit about that Dallas Cowboys situation last year. We were talking a lot about Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. And guess who ended up being the best player for fantasy? Dalton Schultz. Right. And the main reason why is because these receivers rotate in and out. Some guys playing 2 receiver sets. You know who's on the field constantly? The tight end. And if in Alberto, and here's just some quick stats about Alberto that gives me I might take him in that 2 tight end late round strategy. He had 5 targets in his lone start without Noah Fant. We have to remember Noah Fant's now gone. He was in part of that Russell Wilson trade. He had 5 targets on 28 attempts in that one game he played without Noah Fant. That's an 18% target share. Not too bad. You know, he ran 22 routes on 32 dropbacks, 69%. Nothing crazy. He actually did block a decent amount in that game. But he had 5 targets on those 22 routes. That 23% targets per route run is actually pretty elite. That's what Darren Waller averaged last year. So he was getting some looks in the offense last year when he was on the field just because he was on there. Now you add Russ. You also add in a team like Nathaniel Hackett, who, by the way, Robert Tonyan finished as a tight end just 2 years ago on like 500 yards, but he had like 10 touchdowns. So there's nothing. Alberto is a big guy. He can probably do the same thing. So any final thoughts about Albert O, the Denver wide receivers? Any final Broncos fandom do you want to just spew out before we go?
I could spew out a lot. Like again, we had the Super Bowl and then we just crashed, and it's been horrible for fantasy, horrible for fans. You know, you saw it last year. Fans actually quit going to games and stuff here in Denver, and that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen here in Denver. And so for what Russ is bringing here with Nathaniel Hackett, we even have a new owner. You know what I mean? Like it's down. We have new everything, and everything. If the way it goes and our projections are right, this should be like one of the best offenses ever. Right? I mean, that's what we're all speculate with Russell Wilson, because he brings that. And like I said, I think he just has a whole renewed outlook on football. He hated it there last year. You could tell he hated it last year. He was not having fun last year. His numbers, I know he was hurt, but his numbers are still, although he is the master of not throwing interceptions. Can I put that in there? He only had 6 interceptions last year. Like, that's the second lowest besides Aaron Rodgers, who did play every game.
Okay. Well, before we close the show,
I'm very excited. I like the energy that is here now. I think it has totally changed, and it should be, as a fan, I'm hoping that things are much different.
Well, I'm just from this episode, spending some time with you today. My hopes and wishes are with you now. And I want, as you as a Denver Broncos fan, to have all the great, because I'm a Giants fan, so I got to deal with Daniel Jones again. So we'll see how that goes. But before we close the show, I want you to give you a quick second. Let the people know where they can find your content, what you're doing, any articles, any podcasts coming up. Let the people know where they can find you.
I'll put some articles out in a few weeks. I don't know where except my own site, which is RRFF, which is barely just a site at this point. I'm just writing for myself. I do a Mallertown podcast. We record Saturdays. They get released later in the week. The guy that I do them with, he's in Australia, so he does all the editing, and we're just like, our times, like, it's 11 o'clock at night for him and 7 in the morning for me when we're doing them and stuff. So we record Saturdays, but they don't get released till later. And it's about that show is not per se about sports. It's about a sports talk show that we all listen to overnight on Fox Sports Radio. Ben Maller. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. If you haven't, go listen to him. He's funny. That's how we all met. We're all just from all over. Like I said, he's in Australia, and we just have fun talking about the show. During the football season, I'll put my picks in there. If you want to go listen, you guys can listen to hear what I put in. But for now, it's just picks. I do just some like 5 players I think you should be targeting, and not players that Twitter's trying to like pound in your head this week. You know, like, let's just peel the onion back a little bit, and there's other players you don't have to. So you're playing against, Jonathan Taylor this week. There's potential here for you, kind of thing. Yeah. It's just what I'm doing right now. I have taken a step back actually from fantasy football. I'm doing real estate classes right now, and I'm just trying to get them done before football season starts. And every night I've been coming home from work doing a class or 2 or 3 or, so I'm just trying to get that done right now. And in about 3 weeks, it'll all change.
Well, we appreciate you coming back out of retirement or a brief retirement, Gronk style. You're our Gronkowski coming out of retirement for us, hanging out, talking a little football. We appreciate you. Make sure you go and follow her, of course, on the Mallertown podcast, and also make sure you check her out on Twitter at FQueenRoxanne. Thank you once again for joining, and make sure everyone goes and follows the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. Check us out on IG and TikTok at Razzball Fantasy, and also go make sure you check us out at Razzball.com. Once again, I'm your host, Bobby LaMarco. Thank you again to our host, Roxanne. We are out of here.